Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
William walked briskly down the wide, sunlit street. He had been in this city for a long time, almost 3 years. William had never stayed anywhere so long before. But here he felt especially cozy and warm. He liked the atmosphere here. Houses, squares, parks, spacious embankment, streets, even people all seemed pleasant, bright, almost native. William considered this place his home. But where was his real home? The man didn't know, but he didn't give up hope that someday he would be able to find out. William was a man without a past. He remembered nothing of his life up to a certain point. About 10 years ago, the man suddenly found himself on the riverbank soaking wet and dead. He was very sick and dizzy at the time. Everything was in a kind of fog at the back of his head. William felt a huge bleeding bump. Sat right down on the damp sand. What's the big deal? Being all wet and muddy wouldn't make it worse anyway. And his legs barely held him then, trembling and under the llama. William tried to remember what had happened to him. Who was he? How did he find himself here? It felt as if he had recently survived a death threat and had survived. William was even sort of relieved now, despite the horror of the situation. Strange, but the man, no matter how hard he tried, couldn't remember anything about himself except the name William. And even then, he wasn't quite sure. But let it be William if nothing else came to mind. The man looked around the deserted beach. Early morning, just starting to wind down. There's a town in the distance. Maybe we should go there. Maybe our familiar houses and streets will hold memories where people will help. William with difficulty got up, waited for dizziness, and on not firm legs moved towards the city. But after walking 100 meters, the man stopped like a stumbling block. The sense of danger had returned. His heart raced. There's an undercurrent on his back. What if he shouldn't go into town? What if something bad happened to him there again? Apparently, William was beaten up. Who did it? Why? There was no answer. The man remembered absolutely nothing about himself and could only rely on his intuition. And it told him to hide, to cover up, to disappear. There was no telling what had happened to him. Maybe they were looking for him. Upon reflection, so William moved in the opposite direction from the big city. At first he shaved the deserted beach, then crossed a vacant lot and came out on a quiet, begging road. On one side of the path was a planting with densely growing trees, on the other a field with tall grass. If suddenly there is a sound of a car traveling on the road, William simply hid, because very often pounding in the heart, very unpleasant cold rumbles in the stomach. All these sensations could only mean one thing: fear. A very strong fear, perhaps even fear for life, except that William's intuition failed him at the time. But he would find out later, much later. Yes, the man had indeed had a deadly adventure, but he still should have gone to that big city. After all, William was already being searched for on the streets of cities near his small homeland. Notices had been posted. Police and volunteer teams were combing the area. But William, of course, had no way of knowing that. His animal instincts told him to lay low. He decided to hide for now, to wait for his memory to return, and then decide how to proceed. The bewildered, exhausted man wandered along the road all day until evening. He did not feel hunger then, only thirst. On the way he met lakes from which he drank. His mind was spinning with anxious thoughts and a string of questions to which there were no answers. In the end, William was so tired that he gave up trying to remember anything about himself, besides his name. Toward evening, the man stopped at Birch Grove and crossed a field. On the horizon, he could see the outline of another large city. The megalopolis is ablaze with colorful lights. That's where William will go tomorrow morning. He had gone far enough away from the dangerous place, and there he could go to the police, where they would figure out how to deal with this difficult situation. It was July. The nights were warm and short, so William was not afraid to freeze. Mosquitoes were bothering him. But that was all right. It was bearable. William slept on a makeshift bed from the armory, covered with grass. He slept restlessly, several times woke up to alarming sounds, listened, but then realized that it was just another big bird flying by or a car in the distance. It was no big deal. He even enjoyed sleeping a little, like this under the open sky, big bright stars, singing, crickets, fresh breeze. It seemed like a long time ago. Or not, it's hard to tell now. William went into town for the morning. It had seemed so close the previous evening. But the man didn't get there until lunchtime. By then his stomach was churning with hunger. The traveler had no idea how long he hadn't eaten. A day at least. On his way to the town of William. Lack had berries and chewed plantain. But these gifts of nature removed hunger very mediocrely. Here, at last, are the first human buildings. The urban outskirts of the not-too-prosperous area preserved from time wooden barracks, dusty, broken sidewalks. This is where William was approached by them. 3 men in dirty clothes and with their daughter tanned faces unjustified abandoned by some dusty and shabby homeless. "Who are you going to be?" inquired one of them. "This is our territory, go bother the bums elsewhere." William only now thought about how he looked from the outside. As dirty and ragged as these homeless people. And in fact, who is he? He's even more desperate than they are. At least these guys know who they are. "Why are you being so weird?" In a softer tone of voice, the second stranger asked, "Did someone beat you up?" "By who?" And William told these men everything he knew. I didn't forget to mention the strange feeling of anxiety and fear that had accompanied him almost the whole way and released him here away from that beach. It was unexpectedly nice to talk to someone. And the homeless people turned out to be very grateful listeners. "It's all clear to me," said the man who had first spoken to William in a very unfriendly manner. "There's nothing to think about. You're the one from ours. You're the one who's unaccustomed. He and your clothes are torn and dirty, and your image is all mouse-bitten. It's all just as it should be. I think you were beaten up either by the cops or the shopkeepers where you tried to steal something. Beat you senseless and left you on the beach, just to keep you out of trouble. You never know. What if you hadn't lived? They'd be in trouble. There's plenty of stories like that on the street, and it happens every day. Maybe it does." William didn't really believe it. The tramp was wrong, of course. At least William hoped so. "I'm going to the police station, have them run it through their databases, see if anyone's looking for me." The homeless men looked around. One of them even whistled at the corpse. "You don't want to do that. Don't do that." Shook his head, silent until now man. "It's better not to be seen by our policemen at all." They, quickly place homeless people in a workhouse. Under the guise of giving homeless people food, shelter, and the opportunity to earn money. Only it's natural slavery. One of ours escaped from there. He told me what it's like there. People are dying like flies. They can't take the strain. Who's going to look into it? A hobo and a hobo. Who needs you anyway? There is a lot of money in it, continued the second interlocutor. We're practically free labor. The police are in on it. So they're scoring the city for people like us. That's why we have to live on the outskirts, or even go into the woods when there are raids. It's made life even harder. And you say the police? They'll welcome you like family. They'll send the exhausted house there today. The only way out is to the cemetery. The fact that ours got out of there once is a miracle. William thanked these men for the truth and thought. He had no idea what to do. He could try to get to another town, but it was far away. And he didn't have the strength to walk. And his stomach is cramping from hunger. So dark in the eyes. One of the vagrants noticed. "Are you hungry?" He shook his head understandingly. "Come to our place. We have recently settled down in an abandoned old house. We'll feed you." On the way, everyone got to know each other. The men had no names, just nicknames. One of them was a fly swatter. The new acquaintances led William to an old wooden house. It swayed and settled from old age. The area around it had become a lush jungle. William barely made his way through the thicket. The more impenetrable areas were enlightened by Nick. "You can't see the house from behind the grass. It's quieter." "Yes, the locals have already spotted us anyway," waved his hand. "Soon someone will call the cops. It always happens like that." "We'll have to look for a new place then," sighed the kettle. "Too bad. I like it here a lot. It's like my grandmother's cottage in the country. And what good was the cottage in the village? Nick asked skeptically. You yourself told me how you were forced to work there from morning till night. You were not fed at all, and for the slightest offense you were locked in the basement and abused. Almost killed. Once you started running away from your own people. So what? Kettle objected. A house is a house. William was finally fed. Half a loaf of black bread, liquid tea, jam on jars. The traveler was explained to him. It turned out that he had never eaten anything tastier in his life. Or maybe it was. It seemed very easy and natural for him to be in the company of these people in an abandoned house. Maybe Nick was right. He really was a vagrant who'd been beaten to a pulp. You need to get some sleep on the road. That's what the flyboy said. Go ahead and set up wherever you want. Stay with us for now. You have nowhere to go anyway. Poor guys. Thank you. So thank you, you're useful there too. 4's always better than 3. I'll make more money. It's safer. You're a tough guy. What muscles? William at that moment for the first time paid attention to his body. Indeed, his chest was strengthened with muscles. On the arms stood out biceps and, how did he even know such words? Strange. You've been through life. You've been bumped around and toughened up. You've had to survive, climb somewhere, maybe do some hard work. So much for the gym. No need for season tickets. Smirked Fly Frog. All right, go to sleep, come on. You need to rest, we're going to earn money. William settled down on the bed without a mattress and fell into sleep. When he woke up, he was in a different mood. His arms and legs felt strong. His head became clearer, true. The details of his past life the man did not remember. That's all right. At least now he wasn't alone. Strange what happened before the beach. Completely forgotten. All that remained was a sense of the deadly danger of the race. A miraculous rescue, despite the lack of chance. In the time since the start of the journey to this great and dangerous city, it's been seared into my memory. Every detail, every detail. A little later, William's new acquaintances appeared. Oh, William, you look normal now, and we're with the rich and wicked. Homeless people scavenged the neighborhood, grabbing every opportunity to earn a penny or a piece of bread. The only thing that was forbidden was stealing. If we got caught, all the locals would quickly report us to the police and goodbye. Goodbye, quiet, quiet place. And they could beat us up or even kill us. Like you, for instance. Nick the Fly and the Teapot have been together for years. Surviving. They set nets in local creeks, caught crayfish and small fish in Colima or in the Dacha settlement. There was always work on the plots. Those who were not squeamish about the homeless entrusted them with simple chores on sheds and roofs to fix the fence, to paint beds, to weed. It was either money or food. Trinity was happy with both. In summer, everything was just fine. We could spend the night even in the open air. But in the winter, we had to move to the city on the heating ducts. Otherwise, it would freeze. And there were dangers there. The police are not good people who see homeless unrequited victims, other vagrants. And there's no way to make a living. Unless you find something clear from time to time in the trash cans at the mall or cafe, only the young, strong, lucky ones like you survive the winter. Nick shook his head sadly, who was clearly the leader of the 3 homeless. Alex, my cousin's brother, died that year. The only soulmate in the whole world. Older, he was already sick. He was coughing so bad, thought he had lungs and was coughing. They won't take us to the hospital. That's why our Alex died of that cough. He was a good man, said Fly Frog. His eyes are misty. Whether it's the memory of his dead friend or from the realization that the same fate awaits all of them. All right, Nick's awake. William, what are you thinking? Where will you move? Or will you stay with us? With you, William answered without a second's hesitation. What else could he do? The memory was still not coming back. There was little hope that it would come back quickly. And here were kind, caring people. They obviously need each other. It's easier for the homeless to survive together. It's a truism. Suddenly it popped up in William's brain, proving once again that he is as much a wanderer and vagrant as his new acquaintances. William and his new friends spent the entire summer in an abandoned house. Then one morning a police car appeared on the street. The homeless were just returning from a night of fishing. The catch was good. A large plastic bag found on the street was filled to the brim. Enough for a couple or 3 days of satiated life. Everyone was in high spirits. And then suddenly this happened. Wait, froze, not noticing the people in uniform. 3 vagrants froze like a stump. They had not yet rounded the corner of the barracks that overlooked their house. The buddies walked farther away and watched what was happening from a safe distance. The cops headed straight toward the homeless shelter. They obviously knew where to go. One of the locals was banging on the door, clenching his fists. I wish I knew who and why, and who he didn't seem to be bothering. We couldn't go back to the house now. The 4 friends spent the rest of the summer in the woods. It wasn't bad. It was warm, quiet, peaceful, and there was enough food. Fishing and household chores at dacha plots were very helpful. And then suddenly at night it became noticeably colder. It started raining. Self-made shalash on a tree did not save from bad weather. Back to town. Decided one morning shaking that banner. William liked life in the city much less than being on its outskirts. Noise, dirt, dark, dusty heating ducts, where rats, cockroaches, spiders lived next door to people, lack of fresh air. The need to be constantly on the lookout for police officers and aggressive homeless people. But friends were there for him. They explained to William how to survive in the city. And he himself, it seems, remembered something from his past life at a subconscious level. He was better at navigating dumpsters than Nick. William realized by some inner instinct where the right restaurants were located and peeked at the moments when there would be something to eat there. It's not for nothing that we met you the other day. William, much more often than his companions, took care of his appearance, brushed his teeth, washed his face, even shaved with machines he found at the dump. Preliminary, of course, having treated them with vodka. Every evening and morning, William washed his face with snow, rainwater, water from the fountain. If desired, you could even take an improvised bath. The first winter was not easy for William. It turned out that he was completely unprepared for this. Strange, considering that the man seemed to have spent his whole life outside. Or is it? As we now know, you can't go to the police. They'll definitely think he's a vagrant, which in fact he is. And the authorities have a short conversation with the homeless. They're free labor, unaccounted for human souls. Do what you want with them. Scary, just like Nick warned. Not everyone survived the winter. In February, the kettle fell seriously ill. His friends treated him as best they could. They drank hot water and fed him heavily, but the man coughed, burning with high fever. Then he even came back. All remembered his grandmother from the village, asked her not to beat him, swore that he was not guilty of anything. Then William dared to steal for the first and only time. Afterwards, he berated himself for the dishonorable deed, especially since it all failed. But at that moment, he thought he was doing the right thing. At first, William simply asked for alms outside the supermarket. But as the nickname warned, people like him are reluctant to give. A healthy forehead works, grumbled old ladies William. He'd love to work, but who will take him? No residence registration, no documents. Who needs him? It's summertime. Private farms always need free hands. What about now? Then William got desperate at the kettle. He didn't have time to wait. He needed his medication urgently. William even knew what kind of antibiotics. Where did he get that kind of knowledge? Apparently, before he'd been on the streets, he'd lived in a normal environment. A long time ago. Anyway, William pulled his wallet out of the absent-minded guy's pocket. He was walking down the street, staring at his phone. Didn't notice anything around him. The wallet practically fell out of the back pocket of his jeans. William only had to reach out, and the man did so, cursing himself with the last words. But a friend needs medicine, and he's dying. Except that no one believes his words. Passers-by are sure that the homeless man is nagging for a bottle. There was not much money in his wallet, but it was enough for the medicine and even for bread and cheap sausage. To the teapot. The pills seemed to make him feel better at first. Everyone believed in a happy outcome. But after a couple days, the disease took its toll. Nick found his friend's breathless body in the evening when he came back from fishing. They buried him in a vacant lot outside of town. It was hard digging the ground, but the buddies managed. All three of them were silent. Only occasionally they exchanged short phrases, and that was strictly on business. Returning to the heat pipe, the clever man told the story of the kettle. A boy, born into a dysfunctional family, drinking parents, many children, and an extra mouth. The youngest grandson was often taken to his grandmother, the mother of the kettle's father. The teapot, of course, had a real name of Jacob at the time. The grandmother turned out to be religious, in a very strange way. In everything the boy did or said, she saw signs that he was possessed by devils. So the old woman tried to exorcise her grandson, and the neighbors' fanatics helped her in this. Jacob was beaten, starved, kept 24 hours in a dark cellar, and all for his own good. He did not go to school so that he would not be exposed to the corrupting influence of the youth. His grandmother intended to make a bright man out of her youngest grandson, so that he wouldn't turn into his mother and father. And the parents, they didn't care what happened to their son. His grandmother took him away, and it's good for them to have less problems. Jacob, of course, complained to his mother, and father tried to explain how badly he lives with his grandmother. But they did not want to listen. They also scolded their son for not feeling grateful to his grandmother for everything she does for him. So the boy started to run away from home. The first time he was returned to his grandmother, after which she beat her grandson. So he couldn't sit down for a long time. The second time the same thing happened. And the third time Jacob wasn't found. He had already gained experience and understood how to hide so you wouldn't be found out and caught. Freedom surrounded his head. The boy was better off outside than at home. That's how he became with the Chinaman. And now all sadly bowed his head Nike, ran away. We all end up like that sooner or later, either by illness or by someone killing us. William thought for the first time not about his past, but about the future. Could this be the life that awaited him? Most likely it will be, because he has no papers. If you don't have documents, then you are nobody. No one will hire you, no hospital will accept you. Survive as you like. Winter has passed. Summer passed. It became much easier to settle down, so I moved closer to the outskirts of town again. Occupied an abandoned house near the countryside. William was getting used to this life. Wandering, casual labor, constant danger. The man realized one thing. You can remain a human being in any situation and under any conditions. It calmed him down, gave him hope. The memory never came back. William was not particularly worried about it now. There was no time for idle thoughts and worries. He had to survive. Several years passed. Nick, Fly, and William were still together. They managed to survive the winter by supporting and caring for each other. They had become true friends, relatives, maybe even brothers. At least William could no longer imagine himself without them. Nick, who always had a clear plan of action, and the good-natured Flyboy made up his family. But one dark August night, there was a raid. Someone called the police again. Noticing that there were homeless people living near the village, William still shuddered at the memory of that moment. The darkness of the early morning was cleared by the headlights of the police cars. Harsh words came from the loudspeakers. It was useless to come out and resist one by one. But they resisted nonetheless. Desperately resisting, not wanting to get into the house. Tried to escape through a hole in the old fence. But as it turned out, two strong men in uniform were already waiting for them there. Nick was the first to be grabbed. Flies and William stopped in indecision, looking at their leader in confusion. "Run, you fools." Nick, whose hands were already twisted behind his back, shrieked frantically. And William ran. He ran so fast that the wind whistled in his ears. He had to escape, to hurry, to get as far away from this terrible place as possible, to hide in the forest, which lay on the horizon as a dark ribbon. The Fly Agaric was still lagging behind. Of all the Trinity, William was the most athletic, probably wrong. He had once had to do physical labor for long periods of time because of his muscles. William was possessed of relief muscles and incredible stamina as an athlete. The man could run fast and long, and was adept at kicking and punching. Perhaps his past was so troubled. He learned it on the street. A lot of times he's learned those skills. Now, too, the policeman turned out to be a fine runner, too. He's overtaken by a speeding flycatcher who's choking to death. He'll soon be chased by the other cops who are already rushing after the fugitive. He's not going anywhere. But William, he's clearly slipping away. The uniformed guy finally caught up with William, grabbed him by the scruff of the neck, yanked him toward him. He had a lot of strength. William came back, tried to break free without success. And then the body worked automatically again, as it had done so many times before. His hands grasped his opponent's chest. His legs performed a technique that William himself did not understand. And now the policeman, confused and surprised, lay down on the grass and looked up into the developing sky. "Hurry up!" "Come on, they are on their way," shouted William Fly. But looking at his comrade, the man realized that he can't go any faster. He can't do anything at all. "William, you run, and I have no more strength." The fly, breathing heavily, fell on the grass. "Come on, pull yourself together," William urged. He even went up to his comrade and took him in his arms, intending to escape with him into the woods. The policeman remained lying in the grass for the time being, but his colleagues were rapidly approaching from the direction of the village. It was no use. It pushed him away. "Fly Frog himself, go save yourself, or they'll grab us all together," and I was still fighting them off. William realized that the flycatcher was right. It was very hard to leave a man with whom so many things connected completely alone. But what could be done? No one would be better off if he, too, was captured. So the man set off toward the forest again. The saving more often was quite close there. Go there, find it. Densely growing trees, bushes, storms. The dog is needed, but until they get him to the spot. No sign of William. No. That morning, William was lost in the thicket, deep in the woods, lurking like a wounded animal. He walked for a long time, trying to get as far away from the chase as possible. By noon, the man was completely exhausted when he saw an old thick tree with a convenient fork. As if specially created for tired travelers, William climbed it and fell into a deep, restless sleep. The man woke up. It was already getting colder by evening. August nights are quite fresh. Besides, his stomach felt sick with hunger. William fortified himself with forest gifts. Right under his tree were thickets of hedgehogs and went on his way. He needs to find a new haven, a new town. He is now all alone among friends. It's bad, it's dreary, it's hard. What's happening to them now? They've probably already been sent to a neighborhood home with no way out. William saw at once. It's a scary place. A tall cement fence with barbed wire running along the top. Maybe that wire was also electrified. There's no way out of the house. William can't help his comrades if he wants to. It remains to hope that the rumors about the house are exaggerated and his friends will not be there so bad as they imagined. William himself, he needs the outdoors in the city. He can still get by in the summer, but the cold weather's coming. You can't stay outdoors in the cold. You have to move to warm places closer to human habitation and garbage cans, where there is always enough food to keep the homeless from starving to death. How to survive on the streets? This William already knew very well. He wasn't worried about himself, but his friends were sorely lacking. The man was used to the fact that they were always together and would support each other with a word and argue sometimes. And now? Now what? He was all alone on the planet again. The man thought that he might have friends and relatives somewhere, about whom he did not remember anything at all. But the memory never came back. William walked out after a few days' journey to the new town, found a place to sleep. Looked around, figured out where to forage for scraps. He saw other homeless people. Some were very friendly, some were belligerent. You had to be on your guard at all times. But the man never approached anyone else. Didn't have the chance. He tried to maintain friendly relations with everyone, but mostly he kept to himself. As the years passed, William got used to his vagabond life. Every once in a while, he'd leave another town and move on. Why? The man himself didn't know. Living conditions for him were the same everywhere. Plus or minus the same. Probably he just wanted to see the world, new places, new faces, interesting landscapes. It's always so interesting. And 3 years ago, William suddenly found himself on his home street. It seemed to him that he had been here once in his past life, or somewhere very similar. The cityscape seemed vaguely familiar. The very atmosphere of the town had a sort of peacefulness to it, a warm appeal to the urchin. The man immediately realized that he would stay here for a long time. And so it turned out. 3 years have already passed, and one does not want to leave his native town in search of a better life at all. And why should I? William has settled in. He's got an almost real home in a cubbyhole under the stairs in an old 3-story house. It was an emergency fund. People didn't live here. It was run by a man from the administration. He let a homeless guy in the den. Live here for now, he said. But what if there's an emergency? Some kind of inspection or people have to move in. Don't be sorry, you'll go out again. So William lived here on a bird's license, but he was glad to have it. Finally, a real room with a human bed, a table, and even a small refrigerator. Stephen was the name of the man who helped William find a place to stay. Tried to get him a janitorial job through his own channels, but he needed papers, official paperwork. What kind of paperwork does a hobo have? It didn't work out. Stephen and William were not and could not be friends. 2 different social statuses. But one day a homeless man in front of the man drove a pack of dogs away from the old lady. Many people saw that the animals were going to attack the old woman, but they didn't dare to come and help. And William, he had lived on the street for a long time and knew exactly how to act in such a situation. The rescued old woman, not having time to thank the savior, immediately hid in the entrance. It is understandable what stress she had gone through. But Stephen, who happened to witness this scene, approached the hero, praised him for his courage, and made an offer, which William could not refuse. "I've been watching you for a long time," said Stephen, shook hands with the homeless man. "You don't look like the usual homeless. Tidy, polite, respectful, and kind. As it turned out, you did not pass by someone else's misfortune. But you live like a dog on the street. That's good now. What will you do in winter? Heat pipes." William shrugged. He had already lived through more than one winter and knew exactly how to deal with the onset of cold weather. "I have a janitor's room under the stairs. I can let you in there. Temporarily, of course. I'm sorry, I can't give you an apartment, but you can live in the room under the stairs." So William had a decent place to live. The man was getting used to his limp. Sleeping on a real bed for a long time was such a blessing. To dine at the table, to take a shower without flinching at every random rustle. It was a little scary to live in an empty 3-story apartment building, like a haunted castle, but it was much better than living in the open air. William loved his room with all his soul, and he was very grateful to Stepanovich for the shelter. The men talked sometimes, when they happened to cross paths in the street. And this happened quite often. Stephen's house was not far from the emergency fund. "I look at you and I don't get it. You really don't of your past, do you?" "No, I don't. I don't remember anything. It shouldn't be like this. We should go to the police." "No, we shouldn't." In years of living on the street, William was used to being wary of the police. And it's been years. Maybe someone was looking for him once, but they've definitely stopped looking for him now. Are you kidding me? It's been over 10 years since William found himself on the riverbank. "Well, suit yourself," Stephen agreed. "Only I'd do something different if I were you." In hometown, William had almost got a real job after all. Unofficial, of course, but permanent. To the local supermarket at the same time, 3 times a week the truck with products arrived at the same time. Girls, salesmen, and cashiers had to unload it. But the girls did not have enough strength. Heavy work was clearly not for women's hands. One day, seeing how the salesmen in the store's branded clothes tormented with all these boxes, William could not stand it, rushed to their aid. It wasn't hard for him. The man was no stranger to physical work. He was strong enough. "Thank you." One of the girls smiled embarrassedly when the job was done and handed the man a bag full of groceries. "It's almost expired. It expires in a couple days. But these products are tasty good. We also take them home when we write off the expiration date, so don't be afraid to eat it." "Thank you," smiled William. The man's been eating treats for years. from the trash cans, and never thought to be afraid. It had been a long time since the man had eaten proper food. And there's sausage and bread and some canned goods. And there's more. Could you come to us the day after tomorrow? At the same time, the truck will be here again, and we're no movers, you see. The payment will be the same. How's that? Of course, William was happy to agree, and so it went. Now, 3 times a week at the same time, the man came to the supermarket and unloaded the truck, and then received a huge bag of food. William had a place to live. He had completely forgotten what hunger and the dangers of the street were. Of course, the man realized that such a life would end someday. But what will be, will be. Surviving on the street wasn't something he was used to either. For now, William was enjoying prosperity. He had plenty of free time now. The man liked to just walk around the city, the center of the suburbs, the waterfront, the suburbs. Everything here was nice and pleasant. Sometimes William found a little part-time work. Same as before, small errands, mostly for people in the private sector. He was happy to be trusted with the work, unlike the other homeless people. William looked much better groomed, decent, and generally more trustworthy. With the proceeds, the man bought some medicines, some clothes. Once he saw an album with expensive art pencils in the store and couldn't resist. He spent all his earnings on this beauty. With surprise, the man found out that he could draw. From under his hands began to come out wonderful paintings, mostly urban and rural landscapes. Everything William had ever seen beautiful. Everything that had once struck his imagination was now transferred to paper. You're an artist too, aren't you? Stephen was surprised. One day, when he came to check on his ward and noticed the paintings on his desk. I don't know, the man shrugged. You're an interesting person. I'd really like to know what happened to you in the past. William wanted to know too. But on the other hand, there was also the fear. What if he found out something bad about himself? What if he had done something terrible in his past life? Someone was chasing him, trying to hurt him. He got hit in the head. It didn't just happen. Maybe it's better not to know anything about what happened before. It's better to live in peace, especially since life's kind of back on track. Williams even made some friends because it's hard to live alone. Stephen. No, you couldn't really call him a friend. More like a patron. But the local janitors, the supermarket security guard, the lonely grandfather next door. All of these people were now frequent visitors to William's house. And he was glad that he finally had a place where he could invite guests. On this sunny morning, William was in a hurry to get to his main job at the supermarket. The truck would be arriving soon. The man was running a little late today, having stayed up late working on another drawing. So he overslept. But that's okay. He'll just have to push on in time. William approached a busy intersection. Active traffic on the roadway. At all hours of the day and night, cars whizzing by at high speed. Dangerous place. A man was hit here once. It happened right in front of William. The man was just running down the street in a hurry to run the green light. And this guy, he was just crossing the street. It's a crosswalk and a green light. And there's this car. The driver didn't even slow down. The teenager flew up like a wooden doll, flew a few meters, and then fell right on the asphalt. William turned sharply and went the other way. He couldn't see it. He didn't want to. His heart was pounding frantically and tears were pouring from his eyes. So much he felt sorry for the kid. After a while, a mourning wreath appeared on a pole near the crossing. It hung there for a few months, then disappeared. But William, now near this place, he was especially careful until he was sure that all cars had stopped. Wouldn't step foot on the zebra. Today, too, he stopped just like that, away from the road, and looked into the traffic light. We should wait. The man was here alone. It's not rush hour. Not a lot of people on the streets. And then, William's sensitive ears picked up a strange sound, the sound of wheels hitting the pavement. But the noise was getting closer. The speed of the object seemed to be increasing, but the road's close by. Red lights on, cars speeding past at breakneck speed. William turned around just in time. The boy on the scooter will fly into the roadway, and there he has no chance. Cars are streaming in. The speed is high. No driver has time to slow down. The kid does get past William. He couldn't react immediately. A car was coming straight at the boy. The man had time to notice the horror on the face of the young woman's driver. William, risking himself, jumped to the road, grabbed the boy by the scruff of the neck, and literally threw him on the sidewalk. He himself immediately jumped after the car, but still caught him a little. At that speed, even a light impact was sensitive. William went down. The car came to a stop a little further away. There was a loud squeal of brakes to William, and the boy lying on the pavement was already rushed by a woman driver. "What's wrong with the child?" The first thing she exclaimed. "I hit him. It's all right with him," William assured her, rubbing his ears and long spot. "I grabbed him from under the tires. The kid wasn't hurt." "How lucky." The woman was ready to burst into tears. "And you're all right." William nodded silently. He wasn't going to say that to an already terrified woman, that he had a huge bruise and limp on his thigh right now. William would probably be for a long time to come. "It's nothing. It'll heal like a dog." "What are you doing?" The lady's anger has turned to the boy. "Don't you know you have to cross the road on green? You still haven't learned how to do it, big boy." The kid looked like a hunted animal. He looked about 10 years old. The boy was just now beginning to realize what he'd avoided. William felt sorry for the hapless racer. Well, he'd forgotten, that's all right. The main thing is that everything was all right. Yes, the woman agreed. "It's lucky you were there." The boy was lucky, unlike his scooter. All three looked at the wife's Concord scooter, which was under the wheels of the car. But so that the police call an ambulance, or the woman looked questioningly at the other participants in the incident. "Sounds to me like it was okay. It was fine," William shrugged. The boy nodded his head in agreement. "Well, I'll be on my way then. I'm late for an important meeting," the woman said. Then she looked at the boy and added in a stern voice, "About you. Let this all be a good lesson. Next time the kind uncle may not be around, but or will he not have time to react?" The woman left. William pulled the so far resolved scooter out on the sidewalk, scratching puzzledly at the back of his head. "Your transportation is unrecoverable. Now the insubordination is his. So be it," exclaimed the boy who had been silent until that moment. "My father will buy me a new one. He's not a pauper like me." "I doubt he would if he knew the truth." William shook his head. He didn't like the word beggars coming out of the child's mouth. It sounded arrogant or something too arrogant. The boy must be from a wealthy family. He's obviously wearing expensive clothes. He's spoiled and disdainful of those of lower social status. And yet his savior is even worse than a beggar Ford, a homeless man with no past. "Thank you very much." Tears welled up in the boy's voice. He looked at William with such sincere gratitude that the man understood. He jumped to conclusions about the boy. The boy was like him, not bad. "You're welcome," the man smiled. "But don't ever do that again. You know you have to cross the road on green, don't you?" "Yes, I know, of course," the boy waved his hand. "There's something else going on here." "What is it?" William wondered. He wanted to talk to the kid a little more, to help him relieve the stress of what had happened, to make sure he was all right before he let him go on his own. "My dad ordered me a new scooter from Europe. It's cool. No one else in town has one. Although now I don't have one either. Oh well, my dad's gonna order it again. Anyway, it's got this really cool braking system. I practiced it. I practiced it in the yard. It worked. It would stop on the playground in 1 second, no matter how fast I accelerated. That's cool. But let's say William agreed. He was beginning to see where his young companion was going with this. "So that's the way I wanted to brake before the road. I've done it before. But nothing. I just kept on rolling. And I had already reached a decent speed. I was flying right under the wheels and I couldn't do anything. I could have jumped off it. That's all." William looked at the boy point blank. "Life is worth more than any piece of iron." "Yeah, I know," sighed the boy. "I didn't realize. It was just so scary I couldn't move or think straight. I was numb." "Yeah, kind of. I see. And the scooter didn't stop. You know why? You didn't take into account the fact that the road goes uphill here. And you were probably testing your vehicle on flat ground. It's like the kid had an epiphany. I hadn't thought of that. Well, same thing. You'll have to be more careful from now on. Come on, stop, the boy exclaimed. You can't do that. You saved my life, and I don't even know your name. My name is Uncle William. William introduced himself. Wow, and I'm William too, the boy shone. We're Shek. You and I, William smiled. He liked this boy more and more, sweet, so sincere, grateful, a good kid. He shouldn't have thought badly of him at first. Come with me, suddenly the boy begged. Come, come. My father's office is just around the corner. Do you know how rich he is? He owns his own restaurant. You know it's called Urban Legend. It's a big name. William smiled. Of course he knew the place. He passed by it a few times. It was where the local elite usually gathered. The restaurant was of the highest class, though William didn't need to inspect the garbage cans near the eateries now. He made a habit of going around the hometown too, and noting where the local cafes and restaurants were located. Just in case. Yeah, it's a cool name, little William agreed. His dad came up with it, and his friend's a companion, that is. Well, that's all great. But I've got to go, William realized. He remembered he was already late for the supermarket. The truck would be here soon. He wasn't used to letting people down, and he was late. Only once I'm late as much as twice. You can lose the job that has been feeding you for so many years. In this business, it's important to be efficient and punctual. How could it be William was upset? I must introduce you to my father and tell him what happened. He'll thank you. Do you know how happy he'll be that you saved me? I didn't do anything wrong, and it's about time I did. Yeah, well, you didn't. You're limping, and now you're hurt because of me. Please come with me to my father. I don't have time, kid. I'm in a hurry to get to work. The best thanks I can get is your promise to be careful from now on. I will be careful. I promise, the boy assured me. But you promise too. Let's meet here tonight at 6 o'clock. I'll talk to my father. He'll come with me and thank you, please. It's unnecessary trying to fight back. William, it ended well, but you saved my life. The kid exclaimed. You promise you'll come. So much pleading was in his gaze, so much hope, that William could not refuse the boy. All right. William shone his freckled face. His face lit up, a wide grin meaning, see you tonight. The boy waved goodbye to his savior and rushed up the street. Alive, healthy, cheerful. William glanced again at the buy mode and William on the scooter, by the roadside thought of what might happen by her revived, and hurried towards the supermarket. The man limped badly. His hip ached mercilessly, but there was no fracture. That's for sure, which means it's no big deal. It'll heal in no time. William hurried to the supermarket, while his young namesake raced to his father's office. The building where it was located was literally on the next street to the place where the tragedy had almost disappeared. William was so excited about this scooter. The boy always had plenty of toys. His father bought his son everything he wanted, but this scooter was not that in the city in general, in the country. The boy on it turned out such spectacular tricks, of which he had never dared to dream before. His mother, looking at these tricks, clutched at her heart. But his father was happy that his son is growing up so brave and agile. He always supported and encouraged the hobbies of his only child. The family lived in a large house with a beautifully tended garden. Vitya's mother did not work, was engaged in the household and her son. But the father, he is constantly then on business trips, flew away. Then in the office, disappeared day and night business required his constant participation. The boy lacked his father's attention. He often missed him, and therefore used any suitable excuse to visit his parents in the office. Now there was a wonderful opportunity to see his father. Of course, a parent should know about what almost happened. A little scolding, of course, for being careless. Maybe he won't buy a scooter like that again. He cares, but a father should know who saved his son's life. And he'll thank William, of course. He'll give him lots and lots of money. And William obviously needs it. William is not small, immediately realized that the man snatched him from under the wheels of the car, very much in need. It's probably a homeless man. There's a lot of them in this town. William, this money will not be superfluous at all. Hi. William nodded to the girl at the front desk, which he saw the boy. she immediately contacted his father on the intercom. "Anthony, let your son come in here." William ran to the 4th floor in a few seconds. His father was already waiting for him. "But how are you?" "Offspring." The man smiled from his chair. Then he added anxiously, "What happened to you?" "All your legs are in one." Dad exclaimed the boy of what might have happened if this homeless man hadn't been around and didn't want to think about it. Money. Is that what it is today? Tomorrow it's gone. No matter how much you give them, they'll run out fast. They'll be gone. What about then? I'll get him a job at our restaurant, help him with the paperwork. If he's homeless, I don't think his papers are in order. And without them, no one will hire him or treat him. If he gets sick, so the man wanders. And he's a good man if he risked himself to grab you, a fool, from under the wheel. There aren't many like him nowadays, and we'll give him a ticket to life, a chance to become a full-fledged member of society. How he takes that chance is up to him, but it's a lot better than just money. You're right, Dad, William nodded. And William is a really good man. He must be in some kind of trouble to be homeless. And we'll help him get back to normal. How's that for a plan? William shined. That's good. So what time do you meet there? All right, 6 o'clock. Then be at my office at 6:30. We'll go together to thank your savior. I want to shake his hand. Yay, the boy exclaimed. Now go home, watch me carefully. Or let me ask the driver to drive you. I'm not the one who took a walk. Don't worry, now I know how careful I'll be 100 times more careful than before. When William arrived at his father's office at the appointed time, he did not find his parent. Anthony had left for an important meeting in the administration. The receptionist explained. But don't worry about your arrangement, he hasn't forgotten. Travis is aware of all these things. He'll go with you. Where did you agree to go? William sighed. Travis, that's good, of course. He's a great guy, young, funny, and jokes always funny, and treats Will well. He's got a son the same age as Peter, Travis, his father's assistant, his right-hand man, when it comes to certain errands, like this one. But still a father. I wish he'd gone with William to meet the homeless man himself. That would have been the right thing to do. William is his son. It takes a long time to get upset and cranky. William was not used to it, so 5 minutes later he was laughing at Travis' jokes, walking with him to that very crosswalk. William arrived at the agreed place much earlier than 6:00 p.m. He felt awkward as he stood there, waiting here to thank him for saving the kid. Yeah, any normal man in his position would have done the same thing. It's a normal, natural thing to do. What gratitude could there be? But William, he promised the boy. He'll come, he'll wait, he'll be upset. If I've promised, be good enough to show up. The man saw them from afar, the boy and his father hurrying down the street toward him. Both were smiling. You could tell they had a great relationship. Hi. William suddenly turned to William and hugged him around the waist. The man awkwardly patted the boy on the head. Hi. Hi, namesake, hello to you too. On behalf of this young man's father, I want to thank you for saving the boy, Travis said, shaking William's hand. Is it lucky for all of us to have you around? So you're not? No, I'm not his father. Anthony wanted to come in person to meet you, but there was an emergency. I understand. Of course, you're welcome. Anyone would do that if they were me. I just happened to be there for you. That's all. The boy was so insistent that I come. I couldn't refuse. And you were right to insist. Travis smiled. We had a whole plan for how to thank you. And Anthony's assistant told William everything about the fact that now the homeless vagrant would work in the urban legend as a janitor of the territory, and that his salary would be higher than the average in the city. And about how Travis plans to make his son's savior documents that will make him a productive member of society. That's what? That's all true. William couldn't believe his ears. But the job, I see. The papers, is that possible? To get a passport, to be legalized, to become a man not only in essence, but also in documents. It had long been William's dream. Except until now, the man thought it was impossible. And then suddenly, nothing is impossible for Travis, smiled Travis. And so once again, William began a new life. Now the man came to the Urban Legend restaurant every morning. He spent his working hours mainly in the kitchen, in the back rooms, and on the adjoining territory. He cleaned, took out heavy garbage, washed the floors, swept, followed the pleasure. A little bit of everything. The restaurant staff was initially suspicious of the new employee, like a vagrant off the street. How could Anthony even think of hiring someone like that? Yeah, he saved his little boy from a tire iron. So he paid him off, and that was that. But gradually, William proved to be a conscientious worker, a good man, a pleasant conversationalist. The man never refused to help his colleagues and could lighten the mood with an appropriate joke. The new employee did his work carefully and thoroughly, so soon he had some well-wishers and even friends in his new place. Little William often came to the restaurant to say hello to his savior and to find out how he was doing. A bright and very nice kid. The man would sometimes tell him about life on the streets. Particularly scary and unpleasant moments were avoided. It seemed almost like an adventure, a fairy tale with a happy ending. A happy ending, of course. After all, now the former vagrant sleeps in a room under the stairs and works in one of the elite establishments. In his hometown. Who'd have thought it? Yes, Anthony kept his promise. William got a passport. The man almost cried the first time he held it in his hands. It meant a lot to him. He was no longer an invisible wanderer, but a full-fledged citizen of his country, with all the rights he was entitled to. William had no idea how the chief had done it, and he would have liked to thank Anthony personally, except that the boss never showed up at the restaurant. He passed orders through his assistant, the Travis, or simply Matthew. William had become friends with the man, and they now did without patronymics. Anthony also sent the paperwork for the new employee with him. William now had both a surname and a middle name. In honor of the town where he was brought, by fate, he was given a residence permit in a small house. That's it. A real man, even if without a past, but still not invisible, no longer a vagrant from the street. To say thank you personally to the owner, William was glad, looking at the new document. He rarely comes here at all. Travis shook his head. What does he have to do here? He does all his business from the office, traveling on business trips. Do you know how much trouble he has? Now we are expanding and opening branches in different cities. Anthony runs the place and sleeps at night. Little William confirmed this information. He repeatedly complained to his older friend that he missed his father because he had no time to spend with his family. So all the business at Urban Legend was actually handled by Travis, under the remote supervision of Anthony, of course. When William got his first paycheck, he thought it was a mistake. He was handed a puffy envelope full of large bills. The man had never held such money in his life and had no idea what to do with it. No, that's right, smiled Travis, whom William approached with the question. Odence, that's fine. Buy yourself everything you need to live, but save up a little. That way, we'll slowly save up for a place to live. The prospects were so exciting. Could it really be true? It could be. William has a stable official job, a high salary, documents, and soon he would have a place of his own. Not so long ago, William could not even dream about it and looked into the future with fear. Now you can go to the doctor, tell him about this whole situation with his memory. Maybe there was a cure that would help him remember what had happened before. Until the moment when William got soaked and woke up on a deserted beach. But the man was in no hurry to go to the hospital. There was always something to do and some excuse. William is still very afraid to learn the truth about himself. I don't know what was there before. Right now, the man was quite content with his life. He was afraid, desperately afraid to destroy this idyll, to lose everything that fate had bestowed upon him. Maybe the fog of oblivion was for the best. Maybe William would be happier and calmer if he didn't rake up the past. One early morning, the kitchen superintendent sent William to the VIP lounge. One of the cleaners had suddenly fallen ill, and the place needed to be cleaned before evening. William, taking a bucket, a mop, rags, and some product, went to the hall. He had never been here before. He had glanced through the door occasionally as he passed by. Now he had an opportunity to examine the room more closely. Expensive, exquisite furniture from Italy, smooth, shining floors, massive chandeliers. Everything here was luxurious, rich. Of course it was. After all, this was where the elite usually gathered. William's attention was drawn to the paintings on the walls. They were drawings made with watercolor pencils. They must be the work of a famous artist if they were here. That's odd. It was as if William had seen them before. Moreover, the artist was clearly working in a manner similar to William's own. And the subjects the painter chose are the same simple landscapes. Faces of people, animals in motion. William was interested. He wanted to know who the author of the poems was. The man walked around the room, hoping to see the name of the artist on one of the drawings. He didn't even realize that he was being watched at that very moment. Anthony was somewhat concerned about how things were going in his brainchild of urban legend. The man. Lately, he had thrown all of his energies into branch design and development. Just kidding. Now he had not just a restaurant in his hands, but a whole chain of such establishments. Almost an empire. He doesn't see his son. His wife will soon forget what her husband looks like. It's nothing, it's just a busy period. It's hard to carry such a load alone without a loyal companion you can trust, but it'll be a while before things get back to normal. It would be necessary to fly then with the family on vacation to relax together on the ocean to relax, to be together. Otherwise, what is this money for? Once Anthony seemed that money is the main thing in life. Without it, you are nothing so defenseless bug. Well, how else could a boy from a poor family count? No normal clothes. Little Anthony had no textbooks, no food. No toys and other childhood joys to speak of. Anthony's father was a classic alcoholic. He drank sporadically, didn't work, and drove the whole family away in the evenings. His mother put up with it all without complaint. And even as I realized later, Anthony felt a kind of pride that she was so proud, so patient. None of the spouses cared about their son. Anthony, although not an orphan, grew up with living parents as a weed and felt very unhappy. Once Anthony and his best friend, a boy from a similar and impoverished family, vowed that he would not live like his parents. We would have lots of money and become great businessmen. The boy looked at his buddy with burning eyes. We will be strong, we will be respected and feared by everyone. And we will also be kind and help everyone who is having a hard time, the buddy added then. The neighbor boy was as smart as Anthony himself, so the boys were never bored together. Where there in their little heads were constantly coming up with interesting ideas. The fellow Anthony was also characterized by a soft heart and a kind disposition. He was always feeling sorry for someone. Always the boy was eager to save someone. A good quality, valuable and rare. But it did not bring him to good in the end. Remembering his childhood friend, Anthony sighed heavily. So much time had passed, and this story still wouldn't let him go. His heart ached. His soul was torn by the unknown. There was still no clarity. The man banished the sad thoughts and focused on the case. He had always been able to gather himself, to concentrate on problems, discarding all unnecessary things. That was probably why he had reached such heights. What was bothering him now was that the revenue from the urban legend had plummeted. What's wrong? Maybe it was time for a menu change. Or is the design outdated? Or is there something wrong with the staff? We need to find out why diners are now choosing to dine at the competitors. Anthony decided to scrutinize the latest security footage. He's attentive, sensitive. He'll figure out what's going on, especially since it's not the first time this has happened. The man turned on the recording in real time. We need to take a look at the room first, now that there's no one there. Early morning is a good time. Anthony immediately noticed the new janitor. This man saved his only son. The man was going to meet him to thank him in person, but there's no time for family. So Anthony put it off until later. The man's conscience was clear. He had done everything he could for the man. He had even issued him the documents, although it was not easy and not cheap. That's why Anthony now saw the new employee's face for the first time. He's a drifter. He's interested in painting. He's looking at paintings. William came closer to the camera. His face appears on the screen in close-up. The urban legend's master literally froze. No, this can't be happening. It doesn't happen like this. This is a mistake. But the longer Anthony gazed into the janitor's face, the clearer he realized no, there was no mistake. The man's heart was pounding. It felt like it was about to burst out of his chest. Anthony jumped up from his chair, where he intended to spend the whole day checking reports. No time for that now. He grabbed his car keys from the desk and, without waiting for the elevator, rushed down the stairs on foot. William made quick work of cleaning up. Travis let him go to rest before his new assignment. In the meantime, the man enjoyed the respite, sitting on one of the benches in the garden in front of the restaurant. Anthony spotted him as soon as he entered the gates of the urban legend. The man never complained about his eyesight, so he could see the janitor perfectly from this distance. Yes, it was definitely him. A chill ran down his spine. His brain was still refusing to accept the obvious. Anthony took a couple of breaths to pull himself together and slowly approached the janitor. "Hello," said the restaurant owner, scrutinizing William's face. "Hello." The janitor jumped up from his seat. He immediately realized who was in front of him. Anthony's picture was occasionally flashed in the press and advertisements, and little William often showed his older friend pictures of his father. It's nice to finally meet you in person." Anthony smiled, extending his hand to William. "Likewise. I've long wanted to thank you for giving me a chance at a normal life. It's the least I could do. What could I do for you for saving my son? My wife and I have one. I don't know how we would have gotten through all this. He's a great kid." Warmly, William smiled. "Yeah, agreed, Anthony. But he's a little fast, too fast. Well, I was like that myself. And you? They say you don't remember anything about your past." William shook his head. "I woke up one day on a deserted beach. I think I'd been hit on the head. There was a big lump on the back of my head, and I couldn't remember anything about myself except my name. That's how I've been writing ever since." William Anthony suddenly grabbed his interlocutor by the shoulders. "Take a good look at me. Look at me. Really? Don't you remember anything at all?" William clutched his eyes in confusion. At that moment, he was filled with a whole range of emotions: astonishment, anxiety, a premonition of something great. And yes, indeed, Anthony's face appeared vaguely familiar to William. He had seen him somewhere before. On the other hand, of course, he had seen all those pictures, the advertisements. "Sit down," said Anthony. Finally, let go of William. The men lowered themselves onto the bench. I wanted to talk to you more gently. But now that I've seen you so close and realized it's you I can't keep quiet, you have to listen to this." William looked anxiously at Anthony. He was seeing this man in person for the first time. Master, he was acting so strangely. The people around him spoke of him as a rational man to the core. But now his behavior is alarming. Could this man be unwell? Anthony took a breath, pulled himself together, calmed down, and began his long narrative with a story about his childhood. Boyhood. It wasn't easy back then. A drunken father, an indifferent mother, no money. And the boy dreamed of a completely different life, for which he initially had no chance. The only close person who understood Anthony better than anyone else was his friend William, a boy with a similar fate who lived in the neighborhood. The boys dreamed, made plans, constantly thought about the future. They really wanted to get rich. Both of them did surprisingly well in school for children from disadvantaged families. Anthony excelled in the exact sciences, while William showed talents in the humanities. This is how they later divided their responsibilities. Anthony was responsible for finance and business planning, while the creative William was in charge of negotiations, public relations, advertising, and design. Yes, the guys from poor families eventually succeeded in realizing their dream. They opened a cafe. They earned the money to get started on their own. Worked day and night wherever they could. They started early at the age of 12. They realized they had to work hard and long. Otherwise, you can't earn your dream. We didn't spend what we earned. At first, they saved money in a secret stash, and then, when they became adults, they opened their own bank account. Eventually, by the age of 20, the friends opened a cafe. The name was invented by William, who was in their tandem a creative leader and generator of ideas. Urban legend. It sounded solid and promising. Anthony liked it immediately. From the inner workings of the Southwest. Also worked by William, who had artistic flair and impeccable taste. Where did the child of drinking parents just come from? William decorated the walls of the visitor's room with paintings of his own authorship. Since childhood, he drew wonderfully. Over the years, this talent has become stronger and more refined. The budget at first was minimal, but William managed to recreate in the cafe a special atmosphere of exquisitely respectable appeal. The kid guest realized what interiors will attract visitors. Clients were attracted at once. Then in their city, there was no such competition as there is now. Today, it's harder for newcomers to enter the business. And in those days, the urban legend very favorably differed from other similar establishments, with its interesting environment. People liked to spend time here. The first profits came in. Friends mutually decided to put money into circulation, improved and expanded their brainchild. They had to work days and nights, worry, take risks, but it was definitely worth it. Anthony and William trusted each other completely. They were probably the closest people in the whole world to each other, despite both having parents. And going into business together didn't ruin that friendship, as many people had predicted. Yes, there were, of course, sometimes disputes and disagreements, but the young owners of the thriving cafe always found a way out of the conflict. In addition, both of them realized that in disputes the truth is born and did not see them as something negative. Anthony was a real business shark, rational, principled, sometimes tough. He chose only those options that immediately turned out to be profitable for their cafe, and ruthlessly eliminated the others. William, that from childhood was characterized by gentleness and humanity. He preferred to give people a second chance, motivate with carrots, not whips. By the way, such behavior in many cases also turned out to be beneficial for the urban legend. True, not always in the short term. Friends as if complementing each other, making an ideal whole. They were business partners and brothers in life. You don't remember any of this at all. Anthony looked at William with hopeful eyes, but he shook his head negatively. I've already realized where this is going. I am that William. But it's all so vague. I remember an episode from a past life. I'm sitting in a tree high up. It's summer, and down below is a boy, a friend of mine, probably wearing a plaid red shirt and shaped jean shorts. Somehow I can see him clearly. It's me, Anthony. I'm that boy. You probably sit on an old apple tree outside of town hiding apples and throwing them to me, and I pick them. You are always the more agile one. I couldn't climb that tree, but you're like a squirrel. In a moment you're at the top where the biggest and sweetest apples grow. William smiled. That's the attention. Even if fleetingly, even if vaguely, a pleasant warmth spilled all over his body. And Anthony, seemingly close and almost kin now. The man did not remember anything of what his master had told him, but the sensations were clearly changing. William no longer feared the chief, he was no longer a stranger to him. Anthony, meanwhile, continued his story. Things were going well for the young businessman. Soon the cave turned into a restaurant, which was becoming increasingly popular in the city. They began to be visited by distinguished guests, local celebrities, rich people, and entrepreneurs. The profile of the institution was rapidly changing. All this, quite naturally, was reflected in the profits. Soon Anthony and William were able to buy good apartments, expensive cars. Now they could afford vacations by the sea, good clothes. Everything was exactly as they had dreamed of when they were children. Of course, there were problems. Competitors were not slumbering. They were constantly arranging successful friends, businessmen, unpleasant surprises, then the rumor of poisoning in the restaurant, then the farm building set on fire, and then threats on the foam flooded. Not everyone was ready to put up with the fact that constantly urban legend comes to the forefront, overshadowing other similar establishments. Therefore, when William suddenly disappeared, Anthony immediately decided that this is the machinations of not benevolent colleagues. He reported this to the police, where he went immediately after realizing that his friend disappeared without a trace. The police had been shaking the suspects for some time, wasting precious days and weeks. It was much later when the media put out an APB on William. Anthony was contacted by the same girl. She called the number given in the missing persons ad and was afraid to go to the police right away. Sobbing, the girl told Anthony that she thought she had seen William the night he disappeared. Anthony immediately rushed to this Dasha. She told him the truth. The young girl was returning from a club in the evening and decided to save a cab, so she went home alone on foot. Not a smart decision, but what can you take from a 17-year-old girl? And of course, near the embankment she was picked up by a group of tipsy guys who wanted to continue the evening. Then she realized she was in trouble. She even lost her voice from fear. In her head, she saw pictures of a terrible future very soon. Guys were reaching for her, grabbing her roughly, laughing hoarsely. Daria was shaking like an aspen leaf. She rightly thought that she could not expect rescue at such a time. But the girl was wrong. Lucky for Daria, at the same time William was returning home, also on foot. He'd been in a bar for too long, and now he was leisurely wandering home, enjoying the freshness of early morning or late night. How do you look at it? William and Anthony used to vacation and have fun together. But recently Anthony has found a family, married a quiet, beautiful girl who took a job with them as a waitress a couple of years ago. And now the happy newlyweds were expecting a baby boy, so William went out either alone or with other buddies. He understood everything perfectly. Anthony had started a family life, and he didn't have time to party yet. His best friend had promised that William would be godfather to his firstborn son. Of course, William couldn't get past the distress even. That was not the kind of man he was. The guy immediately understood everything, assessed the situation, and despite the clear preponderance of forces, rushed to the aid of the defenseless and the man. "You've always been like this since you were a kid," Anthony smiled. "I can't imagine you doing anything differently." A fight ensued. She watched in horror as her savior was hit from all sides. There's not much he can do alone against a crowd like that. One of the bastards was still clutching her shoulder with his strong hands. William was doing well. As an adult, he had already fulfilled his long-held childhood dream of practicing karate. His parents, of course, could not afford to pay for his son's training. Or rather, they did not really want to, not to spend money on nonsense. But now, being already an adult established man, William was doing well in the gym. He had always been noted for his agility and strength. William's skill was waiting for everything at this dangerous moment. But still he was alone, and these 5 or 6. Daria could not later remember the exact number of attackers. Suddenly, the soul-holding guy loosened his grip. I rushed to the aid of my men. They obviously could not cope with the unexpectedly dumped on their head William. The girl did not wait for the outcome of the fight. Immediately slipped into the maze of sleeping streets. Running away, she managed to notice how one of the attackers hit her savior with a bottle on the back of the head, and he immediately fell as under a nightmare. Why didn't Daria call the police then? She was scared. She was in shock, numb with horror. Back in the student dormitory, the girl did not say anything to anyone. She tried to convince herself that everything that had happened was not true. It had never happened, and even almost succeeded in doing so. But then she saw the very orientation of the guy who had saved her from the bullies. He himself seems to have disappeared now, and the two incidents were clearly connected. Daria held on for a few more days. She was afraid to go to the police. Besides, she felt guilty. But her conscience did not give the young lady any rest. What if her testimony could help find this William? He didn't hesitate to rush to her defense. She's afraid to even share the information. Anthony immediately picked up the girl and took her to the police, where Daria was interrogated for several hours. Now the criminal investigation officers had a clue. Most likely, the guy died that night. The attackers hid the body somewhere. It took the police a long time to find the body. Yeah, they drowned out William at the time. They got scared of what they'd done and dumped him senseless in the river. The current is swift. They wouldn't have found him soon enough. They'd think he drowned by drinking himself to death. How many such cases are there? Divers have explored the river for miles downstream, but they never found the body. The search ended without any results. Everything was in favor of William being dead. But Anthony, he couldn't be completely sure. Those bastards. They said it was like William was alive when they dumped him in the water, just unconscious. On the other hand, why doesn't William come back if he's alive? Maybe he's become profoundly disabled, can't explain to others who he is. By the way, Anthony also considered the memory loss version, except that it seemed very unrealistic to him. Movie-like even. Anthony continued to look for his friend on his own. The police over the years lost interest in the case because of its futility. So the search for the body was just for show. Anthony that did not give up. The man hired private detectives. True, their labors did not bear any fruit, but Anthony wanted to believe that he had at least done his best for his friend. Adjusting to a world without William was hard. Friends, after all, they had been together since birth. Anthony felt devastated and depressed, but life had taken its toll. The business had to grow, which was now much harder to do without a loyal companion. And then Anthony had a son, and the world took on new colors. He didn't think long about the name Happy Father. He immediately decided to name his firstborn William in honor of a friend. The wife did not object. The young mother also liked the name. And here you are. Anthony looked at William with burning eyes. Of course, to legalize you, you'll have to go through a lot of procedures. Take a DNA test, be fully examined. But I see it, I know it's you. And that scar on your cheek. You got it on a construction site. When we were working our asses off to get startup money for the cafe, and a childhood memory of an apple tree. I didn't tell you that. You remembered it. The look, the way you moved. I'd given up hope of ever seeing you again. And now it's a miracle. The campgrounds, the sunny steps. William spoke thoughtfully. Something unimaginable was going on in his head right now. Anthony's story had awakened an avalanche of memories. They rolled up and first like sea waves on the shore, and then went in an endless stream. It was confusing, even frightening. Scraps of phrases, separate episodes, some names. Hearing a familiar phrase, Anthony was alarmed. This campground was long gone. But before William's accident, they had planned to celebrate his birthday there. William was really looking forward to the party, prepared, worried about the invitees. Everyone enjoyed it. Are you back? Anthony looked at his friend with a smile. You'll be Vidya's godfather. Now I knew I was in no hurry with this business, with the peasants. Though my wife insisted. But only you had to be godfather. Now is the time.